Future Redeemed, the DLC story for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, is on the verge of releasing, and as someone who likes to theorycraft about what could happen in the future for the franchise, I feel like it's important to take a step back and survey the landscape. Now, I'm full on hot chicken and fries with some ranch dressing, so I'm ready to talk some Xenoblade. And I have made numerous videos theorizing about what could happen in not only this DLC, but also Xenoblade 4, but it's important to bear in mind I could be wrong. Oh yeah, 100% I can be wrong. It doesn't happen often, but I can absolutely be wrong. And at the end of the day, it's impossible to know for certain what they are thinking at any given time or what direction they want to take the series, or they may change their minds at some point and want to pivot over to a new direction. That's unpredictable. We can take the scattered pieces of information and piece them together to try and get inside their heads to give a best estimation, which I find fun because I find theory crafting to be like a puzzle, trying to get into the heads of the writers and decide, or at least contemplate what it is they're thinking, how they want this story to be structured. But at the end of it all, it's impossible to know for certain. That's why it's called theory crafting. And if the DLC comes out and the direction they end up going is completely different to what I or others have predicted, well, I think that's alright. It's an important perspective to have, and remember, when it comes to theory crafting, just because they may end up going in a direction I didn't anticipate or even originally want, I view it as unfair to judge the end product based off of those predetermined assumptions. Now, if the end product just ends up not being subjectively good, that's another thing. But to unfairly criticize a story or a game because it didn't live up to what you specifically wanted that wasn't advertised, nor going off of what they said, I view that as unfair. But there's a bit more nuance to that. Now, at the end of the day, the purchase is on you, and you have every right to or not to purchase a consumer product for whatever reason you deem is valuable enough for you. And you have every right to feel however you want about the product. It's a subjective experience at the end of the day. But the reason I said that was unfair before is not even necessarily towards the developers or the writers or whatever. But for me, I feel like you are potentially cheating or robbing yourself out of a pleasurable experience, or an experience that could have been pleasurable to you, because you may become upset at being wrong about a theory. I could get everything wrong in my predictions, and so long as the end product is entertaining enough, I'm fine with that. And if I turn out to be correct, then besides my ego swelling to intergalactic levels, that's fine too. But I tend to find going into a new game or DLC with an open mind is the most conducive way to have as many great experiences as you can. Going in looking for faults or looking for things to criticize or to be jaded about, because you were disproven early on, or you go into this mental state, even subjectively or even like subconsciously, where you are paying more attention to the negatives instead of the positives that could be there, it does nothing but compromise a potentially great experience for you, which benefits nobody. Personally, I find going into a new game just trying to find things that I appreciate or like to be far more conducive to creating an experience that I enjoy even more, which I find to be far more valuable. Especially as a consumer, because as a consumer, you want to enjoy the things you consume. Maybe I notice a particular musical arrangement I wouldn't have given much thought about before, or a particular scenic view, or something interesting about the combat that aids me in having a more satisfying time, or I stop and explore and find a side quest or event that I wouldn't have found otherwise, or I notice something maybe minor in the grand scheme of things, but something that gives me perspective or makes me appreciate the world or the way the game was developed, or my overall experience just a little bit more. I value those little moments far more than actively going out to find things to critique. Or not even critique, to be negative about. Because that's a thing I feel, because you can see I just did it there as well when I used the word critique. We have this almost assumption, as if the word critique has shifted to mean an inherently negative aspect, when it doesn't have to be. Giving a critique about a game can also mean talking about the positives or the things that you like. It's just a lot of the times in the common or modern video game landscape, we tend to associate critiquing a game with pointing out its flaws, when we could also just be pointing out its positives and the things that I like about it. It's very easy, especially in this interconnected world we now live in, to hyper-focus in on the negatives or the things that we just don't like about something, and to be caught up in that discussion. For the longest time, there's a lot of negative discussion when it came to the second entry in the Xenoblade series, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It was always my favorite in the series, so I just tended to stay away, because I treasured my experiences with that game than trying to defend it against people who viewed the game in a negative light. I also value going into a new product or a new game with a fresh perspective, open to like something, than to be going in with this pre-assumed assumption that I'm going to not like it because maybe a previous entry was bad. I used to be a big fan of the Halo series. Halo 5 is a game I consider to be one of my least favorite games I've ever played. I do not like that game. But when I went into Halo Infinite, I chose to try and be more positive about it, to be more excited about it, and I had a pleasurable experience when I first played the campaign. Is it the best? No, absolutely not. It has a lot of problems with it that I've pointed out on this channel. But I still had a good time with it, and probably a way better time than if I had gone into this game with a negative mindset because of my previous experiences with Halo 5. I value having those positive, fun, and engaging moments far more than I do being negative about something. I feel like a lot of the time in my experience, people go or can go into movies or shows or games with a predetermined path they want that particular story or game to follow, and should it stray from that path, they automatically view it in an inherently negative light, worthy of disdain and criticism, when in my opinion, I find that mindset rather limiting. I want stories and games to take risks and to think outside the box. Hell, it's one of the reasons I love Xenoblade as a series so much, to begin with, because thinking outside the box and taking these monumental risks is a core pillar of what amounts to a Xenoblade game, at least for me. The series isn't afraid to be tropey or predictable if it's service or in service of telling a better story, but it will also throw a wrench into plans and go completely against what you may have predicted or expected. But again, it's in service of telling a better story and creating a more compelling experience. I think a part of the charm of storytelling, and especially Xenoblade storytelling, is to allow yourself to go along with the emotional roller coaster that is a Xenoblade game. Let yourself get caught off guard, to be surprised, to go along with the flow of things per se, and let yourself get immersed in its world, gameplay, and story. If I'm going into a narrative expecting certain things and get upset when those things don't happen, you probably aren't going to like a lot of stories that are out there because it's impossible to predict every little detail. And sometimes not being able to predict is the mark of a good story. It isn't ironclad. Some good stories are predictable, but being able to not understand what's going on can also be a beneficial feeling to have, so that the story can elicit that feeling of being surprised when it's warranted and when it's earned and when it adds to the overall engagement. You don't have to like everything, and we all have our own different preferences, but I find a lot of the time we can be very narrow-minded in what we deem to be good storytelling or a good plot, when in my opinion, there's no real checklist to definitively prove if a story is categorically good or not. Our perspectives and takeaways are highly subjective, based on our own experiences and preferences, and that will always be the most important aspect as to whether or not a story hits for us or not. What may be your favorite story or game may be someone else's least favorite, and your least favorite may be someone else's favorite game. For me, my favorite Xenoblade game is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. That is a lot of people's least favorite Xenoblade game, and that's fine. But it goes to show just how different perspectives and different preferences can paint different experiences. For me, the execution of a story is one of its most important aspects. The pacing, development, and overall flow of things is pivotal, and I tend to gravitate towards stories with a rock-solid cast of characters that pull me into the world and keep me engaged. I can predict and theorize the events of Future Redeemed all day long, but I may not be right, or I may be right. But whether or not Future Redeemed pans out to be a great and memorable experience will depend on the overall execution of the final product and our own perspectives and mindsets that we are in when we experience it. Take Xenoblade Chronicles 1, a game I deeply treasure now, but I came to appreciate that game way more over time once I played it again than I did the first time. I still loved it the first time, but I played a series of games right before then that had similar themes and messaging. And while the zone design absolutely blew me away, there are various aspects about my first playthrough of the game that didn't make it hit as hard as Xenoblade 2 did for me all those years ago. Because I only played Xenoblade 1 relatively recently with Definitive Edition. But I still enjoy the game, and when I did a New Game Plus playthrough on stream, I enjoyed the game infinitely more than I did the first go around. I saw how expertly constructed the narrative actually was, and without doing all the side quests that I did in my first playthrough trying to 100% it, the pacing felt far more natural and beneficial to the overall experience. The zone design still blew me away, and I grew a deeper appreciation for the combat system as I learned more about how to actually play the game. And the ability to be able to change your mind or expand your horizons is a very important skill in my opinion, especially in the modern day with so many different types of media and so many different genres being bombarded into our face at any given time. I would far rather have a broad horizon, be able to enjoy a bunch of different things than to hyper-focus in on any one singular thing. I used to be very big into MMORPGs and FPS games. I was the World of Warcraft, RuneScape, Call of Duty, Halo kid. But I expanded my horizons. I tried out Minecraft with the boys, and I had a lot of fun with that. I got into Zelda games, other RPGs, action games, puzzle games. I really grew to appreciate far more types of games, and I just had an overall better experience. So when my favorite game series of all time, World of Warcraft and Halo, changed and morphed into an experience that I just no longer appreciated or really liked or wanted to engage in, I had fallbacks. I had other things that grabbed my attention, like Final Fantasy, like Xenoblade, like Persona, like God of War, like Soulsborne, like Zelda. All these other series and all these other games grabbed my attention. I was able to appreciate those, and my interest just changed over time. I could have just stick with those old games and just became very pessimistic and focused my channel around negativity and critiquing those aspects that I just didn't like anymore. But I chose to change my direction and go and talk about games that I did love. It's one of the reasons I started talking about Xenoblade on this channel in the first place, because I deeply love the franchise. It's my favorite series of all gaming. And if I had remained closed-minded, I just would never have had those experiences. I'd probably just have a way overall worse time of it. Being okay to be wrong is a fine feeling. You don't have to be right when it comes to theory. I don't have to be right. I could be completely off the mark with my predictions for Future Redeemed. That's fine. So long as the end product is still engaging and fun to me, I'll be fine with it, whatever direction they take, so long as it's executed well. And that to me is a far more healthy, or at least preferable mindset to be in when I tackle a new game or a new experience, than to be closed-minded and think it has to be this specific way, otherwise I'm not going to like it. I'd far rather actively try and enjoy something and find joy or an engaging experience even in the little things than to hyper-focus in on those aspects that I may not enjoy, that I could otherwise just ignore, put my head down and bail through, that aren't that important in the grand scheme of things. I said Xenoblade 2 was my favorite game in the franchise. It's also the one I probably could point out the negatives for way more than the other games. I have a list of things that I don't like about Xenoblade 2. Far more than probably the rest of the franchise combined. But I value those positive experiences far more, so it's still my favorite game in the franchise. And I'd far rather be in that mindset than to focus in on the problems that I have with Xenoblade 2, and for my experience and my nostalgia for that game to be compromised in that way. It has been years upon years upon years that I've gone into a game and hadn't been able to find something that I enjoy about it that kept me wanting to keep playing it. I found that mindset to just really help my overall enjoyment of new games and new experiences and new DLCs. So that's what I want you to try and do. When we play Future Redeemed, try and focus in on the good things. The things that you like and that you find engaging. The things that pull you in and make you want to complete the game, or to play, or look over there, go and explore in that direction, whatever. Try and focus on those aspects, and see if at the end of it all, if you had a better experience because of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your perspectives on this mindset, so leave a comment down below with your thoughts, your opinions on that mindset. Have you ever gone into a game thinking it would be bad to really end up loving it, or go into a game thinking you're going to try and love it, you tried to love it, and you just ended up not liking it, or even hating it? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions. And please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload in the future, because I'm going to be streaming the moment the DLC comes up. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.